last night celebrating Giuseppe Ungaro's birthday, so we were
oh, really?
little bit of a late bedtime.
Well, you know what I do in that case? I just pop an extra Diet Coke and I'm ready to go. So that I find that to be an answer or a cure-all for just about everything. So.
There you go, man. So where were you at last night?
Actually, in Atlantic City last night for Vineland at Atlantic City. Kind of interesting game. Vineland wins 34-8, really in kind of methodical action, methodical way behind their two dynamic players. Maryland recruit Liam Anderson runs for 3 touchdowns, and Rutgers recruit Isaiah Pacheco, runs for a touchdown, throws for a touchdown, runs for more than 100 yards. And Vineland improves to 6-0. And Atlantic City, a good football team drops to 3-3.
Yeah, we just had Mike Frankel on board, and he was saying how Vineland's in such a weird position because they're 6-0 now, but last night was almost a must-win in terms of playoffs just because they haven't been able to rack up many power points.
Yeah, their schedule last night was the first time Vineland played a team with a winning record this season, and a lot of the teams that they played, it's just kind of a way that it's worked out this season. Clearview, Egg Harbor Township, Cherry Hill East, have really not even won a football game this year. So it's just the way it's worked out. It's a schedule they got from the West Jersey Football League when the West Jersey Football League kind of reshuffles the deck after this season. For the next 2 years, Vineland will have a much tougher schedule. But they got the win last night, and I don't think anybody doubts that Vineland is a good football team. And, last night's win gave them a big boost towards the South Jersey Group 5 playoffs. And if they go on and make a run in the South Jersey Group 5 playoffs where you've got quality teams from number 1 to number 8 seed, nobody's going to be talking about Vineland's schedule, if they're playing at Rowan on that first Saturday or Sunday in December.
Mike, what do you think Rowan would be like on that Saturday or Sunday if it was Vineland versus Millville?
Well, that's kind of the interesting thing. You're sort of looking at those PowerPoints, and everybody's trying to gauge it last night. And talking with, Tom McGarry from the Courier-Post and the Vineland Daily Journal last night, he thought there was a possibility that Vineland and Millville could meet in that opening round, with Vineland maybe as a 6 seed and Millville as a 3 seed. So you don't know how the PowerPoints are going to play out over the next I guess we've got, that first weekend in November is when things are finalized. So what's that, like 2 more weekends of football to finalize. So, but there is definitely a possibility that those two longtime rivals could meet in the playoffs. And, that would be, obviously one of the biggest playoff games, that I've probably seen in the 20-something years that I've been doing this, if this were to occur. And if it were to occur in the championship game, it would be that much bigger. So that's kind of, a number one storyline that people are going to be trying to gauge those PowerPoints and figure out, which is, a circus in itself, figuring out those PowerPoints, to see if Vineland and Millville have a shot to meet in the playoffs.
Yeah, Mike, you mentioned the PowerPoint system, and it's so crazy to think about coming into this week. Absegami was in its bye week. They came in, I think, 2-4, and they were in the 6th spot in their playoff bracket. Whereas Pleasantville 5-1, it was sitting at 10th coming into this week. So it's not necessarily your record or anything like that. It can be kind of crazy when you get down to this PowerPoint system and how teams get in and how they don't. I remember a couple of years ago, who was it? Cedar Creek or Barnegat had 7 wins and didn't get in 6 wins.
Yeah, it was Cedar Creek. I mean, here's the thing that people have to remember about the PowerPoints and the situation. And Pleasantville at 5-1 and Ocean City at 5-1 are in the same boat as Vineland. These were programs that had struggled in the previous couple of years before the Cape Atlantic League merged with the West Jersey Football League. A West Jersey Football League philosophy, and I think it's a great one, is to kind of, you put teams in a division, and then, for crossover games, you kind of match them against schools of similar size and programs at similar levels of development and stuff like that. And that allows these teams to sort of get their legs under themselves, get some success. And then when you realign 2 years from now, you get a tougher non-division schedule. So Vineland, Pleasantville, and Ocean City were programs that were rebuilding going into the West Jersey Football League merger. They got some crossovers against some teams that they could be competitive with and in their cases beat. But the flip side of that is you're not getting the power points that you would get if you were, playing an undefeated team every week. So, these teams have gotten schedules that at the time they deserve they played well against them. They've been able to build their program. They've done exactly what the West Jersey Football League wanted, what the Cape Atlantic League wanted to happen when they voted to merge with the West Jersey Football League. And so now they're going to have to, people kind of look at them and say, how could a team that's 5-1 or 6-1 or 7-1 kind of be a 7th or 8th seed in the playoffs, or have to scramble to get into the playoffs? That's the case, basically. That's why that's happening.
Talking with Mike McGarry of the Press of Atlantic City. Check out all his work, pressofac.com. And, Mike, what do you expect when they do this shuffling next year? Do you expect a lot of changes or not too many? How do you think the West Jersey Football League will handle this after the first 2-year sort of trial run with this?
Well, I think the word coming down from people is when they first if you look at the 3 divisions, when the Cape joined, is basically Cape teams are all in divisions together. Now, the word is people talking that basically when they realign divisions, you might see an intermixing of the leagues. I think they put teams in the same divisions, kept the Cape Atlantic League schools together, kept the Colonial Conference schools together to sort of lessen the shock of joining the new league. I think when they come around with new divisions, I think you might see a shake-up with some of the divisions. I think you might see some schools from the Tri-County Conference in with the Cape Atlantic League. I think you might see some, a mix of divisions, basically. So I think you won't see Cape teams playing all Cape teams in their same division. So I think that's one factor you can see. I think the divisions will be based more on, enrollment. So you might see, a Cape team in a division with Delsea. You might see Atlantic City in a division with Williamstown. So
right.
Or Washington Township. I think that's a distinct possibility.
Mike, here's kind of an interesting question I've been thinking of. Do you think they'll move any of these Group 5 teams down with some smaller enrollment schools, typically teams that have struggled at the Group 5 level, or do you think they're going to kind of say, hey, you got enough kids in there, you should be able to compete at the Group 5 level?
Well, I don't think they're going to move them down. What I think is going to happen is I think you're going to see the Group 5s that are kind of struggling right now kind of play each other, basically. So, instead of, let's take a Washington Township team that's 1-4, instead of having a crossover against, I know they play Atlantic City, who's 3-3. They might have a crossover against a program that's also finishes 1-7 or 2-7 this season.
Yeah.
I think that's what you'll see more than the team playing, outside of their group, basically. Because that was one of the biggest complaints that the Cape Atlantic League had, and why the Cape Atlantic League had to move to the West Jersey Football League is they didn't have enough teams. So you had, a Group 5 struggling playing a Group 2 team, and that might have been great for the Group 2 team that beat the Group 5 team, but it wasn't great for the Group 5 team. So
right.
I think that's why you go to the West Jersey Football League. You've got enough teams in each group to sort of, you can make those crossovers and play crossover games against opponents of, similar ability and similar development at that time, basically. And then the league realigns every 2 years, so you're not frozen. So like I said, Vineland's schedule, when they come around for next year, Vineland is going to be playing, 4 crossover games, probably against, 4 of the toughest teams in South Jersey.
Right.
And at this stage of where they are in their program, that's going to be fine for them.
Mike, where do you stand now here? We're about 2 weeks away from playoffs. Anything really jumping out at you as maybe something you didn't expect to see at this point in the season?
Well, I think you look at a big game next week. You've got Pleasantville at 5-1. I think, Chris Sacco, we've talked about him a million times. I might be, number one on the Chris Sacco fan list, basically.
You get a Christmas card from the Sacco family?
Right, I should at least. I think people expected Pleasantville, after a 4-6 season last year, to kind of take another step forward. But I don't know if people expected them to be 5-1 this season. And they've got a big game at home next Friday night against Gloucester Catholic, 5-1. You talk about power points. There's power points on the field in that game. So, I think Pleasantville needs to win that game to really give themselves a boost for the playoffs. And then it's Ocean City's run right now for a playoff team. Again, I think they're unexpected. They returned a lot of guys, but they graduated Andrew Donahue at quarterback. Harry Feifel has stepped right in and had a great season. They're, again, a 5-1 team looking for a playoff berth, their first playoff berth since, I think, 2008. They've got Lower Cape May, I believe, next Saturday, and then they've got St. Joe 2 Saturdays from now. So, it's a tough slate for them, but they've got to win next week to kind of increase their playoff chances.
Mike, one team that really jumps out at me as a pretty interesting team to watch is Atlantic City. They typically start slowly and finish really strong. This year, a little bit of a flip around. They started real hot, so we'll see if they can, kind of do their traditional thing in late October, early November, where they start to get hot. For the last couple of years, they've almost upset the 1 seed as the number 8 seed in that Group 5.
Yeah, last night in that football game Vineland, jumped out to a 20-0 lead. Atlantic City comes back. Mike Costable finds, Flash Morgan over the middle, 71-yard touchdown pass. It's 20-7. And then Atlantic City had another play just before halftime. They had a receiver kind of wide open on a deep ball. Unfortunately, the receiver dropped it. And, if he had caught it, he probably would have scored, and that would have made it a 20-14 game at halftime. Then that game's completely different, in the second half, because the two teams really played even. Vineland got 2 late touchdowns. The last touchdown came with about 40 seconds to go in the game. So Atlantic City, from about midway through the second quarter, stabilized that game, and they had an opportunity to cut it to 1 score before halftime. And I really think it would have been a different game if that had happened. So, but Atlantic City, unfortunately, is in that situation. They're 3-3 now. They go to Kingsway next Friday night. Kingsway's 1-5. Still a good program, tough place to play, long bus ride for Atlantic City. And then they go to Millville the week after, and Millville undefeated, number 1 in our Press Elite 11 ranking. So, I still say Atlantic City is a talented football team. They've got some really good football players, Nazim Derry, Flash Morgan, Costable at quarterback, Cameron Roberts. I love what Thomas Kelly does down there at Atlantic City, but they're 3-3, and they've got a tough schedule coming up.
Mike, good stuff as always. We'll let you get going. Keep an extra notebook on hand. We're getting to that time of the year with cross country, soccer, field hockey. It's all coming down to with the playoffs starting up soon.
Exactly. Busy time of the year. Great time of year, and thanks for giving me a few minutes anytime.
No problem. We love having you, Mike. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.
That was Mike McGarry of the Press of Atlantic City.